do one more. This is one of mine that I wrote 2018 called How Much Is a Soul Worth? It's cute. Mostly because we need to wake up. Yeah. Actually, we've had the day that we need to play this song. Okay. This is one of our songs from the Heaven Train album.
Oh
Yeah, we went really fast on that. I had quite a fast groove there. And we were like, woo! That was cool. I was like, I'm ready to be done. Let's play really fast. Thank you. Just had a little bit of a faster groove, but hey. All right, thank you.
I'm trying to get you some cardio.
I'm awake. I feel like I did aerobics right now. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thanks, kids. Love you.
We love you.
Yeah. So I had to raise my own band so no one could quit. Yeah. Yeah. Or there's punishment. No. All right, thank you. Thank you guys so much for playing music. So we're back to our study in Genesis. We are now looking at chapter 25. Taking time. Okay. I may not finish this whole lesson because I'm just going to keep track of the time and not take us over because there's a lot in this couple chapters. It kind of all goes together, but we'll see how much we get through. Starting on 25, if you're following along, Abraham had taken another wife whose name was Keturah. She bore him Zimran, Joshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shu. Joshan was the father of Sheba and Dinan, and the descendants of Dinan were the Asherites, the Letusites, the Lumanites. The sons of Midian were Ephah, Epher, Henoch, Abida, and Eldah. All these were descendants of Keturah. Abraham left everything he owned to Isaac, but while he was still living, he gave gifts to his sons and his concubines and sent them away from his son Isaac to the land of the east. And so this is important because remember that Moses married the woman from Midian, somebody from Midian, if you can remember that. So it's important that you know that. That's why they threw that in. Abraham lived 175 years. Abraham breathed his last and died at a good old age, an old man full of years, and he was gathered to his people, and his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre, and in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite, the field of Abraham had brought from the Hittites. And where Abraham was buried with his wife Sarah, after Abraham's death, God blessed his son Isaac, who lived near Ber Laha-Aroi. So the important part about that is it shows us that Abraham did remarry after Sarah had more children, and then again, there's where we get the family of Midian, the Midianites, some of them. And then there's the chapter that talks about Abraham's death, and you see that's interesting piece that he was, of course, buried in the same tomb that his wife Sarah was buried in, and Isaac and Ishmael buried him together. So at least for that point in time, there was peace between them, that they came together to bury their father. I think I found that interesting. This is the account of the family line of the son Ishmael. So then we are looking at the Ishmaelites really quick, and it says here, these are the names of the sons of Ishmael, and it lists them all. I don't need to read through them, but the very important part is at the end, is that his descendants settled in the area of Havilah to Shur, near the eastern border of Egypt. So kind of as you're going to Egypt, as you go toward Asher. and they lived in hostility toward all the tribes related to them. So there was a little bit of animosity between them and anyone else related to Abraham. So that's interesting, right? So that's the Ishmael, the tribe, the descendants of Ishmael that lived in hostility to anyone who was related to them. That's kind of sad, because we've seen how there's always enough. There's always enough for the people who have faith in God. There's no need for hostility. In a family, there's no need for people to be jealous and to hurt other people in their family. But there are some people that just, in their view, they never have enough. And so they're the ones who are mean and hostile to other people. Verse 12 then talks about the death of Ishmael. Verse 18 by saying living in hostility. Yeah. Verse 19 brings us back to the story where Isaac has to pray for his wife to conceive. So we're going to read on to read that part. And God is choosing to reveal, you'll see in these this piece right here, that God always chooses the underdog and the rough situation. And he does that so that people will always know it's God to the rescue. That by human hands, not much is accomplished. It's always because of God. And so these are the people who are the ancestors of Jesus Christ. And so that's why it's super important that at least some of them get it right. Not all of them get it right, but at least one line, somewhere along the line, will come the Christ. And so that's what is really important. So this is the account, if you're following along, verse 18. This is the account of the family line of Abraham's son Isaac. Abraham became the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah of Bethuel of the Aramean from Paddan Aram, the sister of Laban the Aramean. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was childless, and the Lord answered his prayer, and his wife became pregnant. The babies jostled within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 people from within you will be separated. One will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. So she's like, there's this contest inside me. What is going on? And that's what the Lord says. And again, the Lord is going to choose the underdog in the situation. 24 says, when the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first came out was red, and his whole body was hairy like a garment, so they called him Esau. After this, his brother came out, and his hand grasping Esau's heel. So his name was Jacob. And Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. So in this time period, remember, the earth was different. It was more lush. People lived longer. And they married later, especially the men. And so by the time that Rebekah gives birth, she's probably in her late 30s, mid-30s to 40s even by the time. So she was barren for 20 years. So we don't know her exact age. We know she was most likely in that time quite a bit younger than Isaac. But nevertheless, she was not young necessarily when she had these babies. And so, again, here we have, remember how Sarah was barren, and then God brought this child. So God promises to Abraham, you're going to be a great nation, but he had no children. And then in the nick of time, here comes the babies, Here comes Isaac. And then same thing. Isaac marries Rebekah, and he was the only smart one because he only had one wife, right? And so, yeah, he's the only smart one. The others are not that with it. And when they had multiple wives, that was not scriptural, because the Bible in Genesis 1, in the beginning of Genesis, clearly one man, one woman in marriage. So that was not scriptural, but Isaac is the only one who really got that figured out. He wasn't perfect, we're going to find out, but he was pretty good. He was a pretty good guy. He did love God and follow God most of the time. But again, God chooses the underdog. He chooses the hard situation because he wants it to be known that he intervened. So he definitely intervened in Rebekah because she had no children for 20 years, and then she had children, and then never again. She had these two boys, these two twin competing boys. So reading on. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once, when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country famished, and he said to him, "Jacob, quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." And this is why he's also called Edom. Jacob replied, "First, sell me your birthright." "Look, I'm about to die," Esau said. "What good is a birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew, and he ate and he drank, then he got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. So we learn a lot about the two people right now. First thing we see is that obviously Isaac likes the man's man, the outdoor boy. He likes to eat wild game. You can see that this boy goes out and, man, by now goes out hunting and gets him what he wants, brings it back, and like, "Here I am, Dad." Well, Rebekah says Jacob stayed closer. He's probably more like a farmer, taking care of the goats and the things and helping his mom. So she liked him more. And so that causes a rift right there. And then Esau was very impulsive. So we would say he lacked in emotional intelligence. He didn't often think before he did things. And you can see that. And it doesn't serve him well. And so he's also very dramatic. You know, he's so dramatic. He's kind of a little bit entitled, impulsive, and he's like very hungry. And he has been out for days, so he went out with no provision. So that tells you one thing. He's so confident of his hunting that he didn't take anything with him to eat. So he's probably pretty hungry. But when he comes back, so he has this hunting trip where he got skunked, right? He didn't get anything. And he didn't take any provisions because he just was like, he's the man. He's going to get it. Well, he didn't this time. And he was probably pretty hungry. So Jacob, on the other hand, is cunning. He knows his brother is very impulsive and doesn't always think before he does anything. And so he tricks him out of his birthright, which in those days always went to the firstborn son. That was cultural. Not necessarily biblical, but cultural. And so I'm sure Esau is thinking, you know, I'm going to tell Dad and he'll give me back my birthright, and it doesn't really mean anything. And it doesn't mean I can say what I can make any oath I want. It doesn't really matter. Because he was so hungry, and you could see, oh, I'm going to die. He was so dramatic, you know. He could have just really said, Jacob, no way, man. I'll go get some food somewhere else. I mean, honestly, that's what he could have done. Jacob knew he would fall for this thing. So Jacob's not perfect either. They obviously don't like each other. Jacob must have had an axe to grind, or else he wouldn't have done that. So possibly, you know, Esau is always like making fun of him for being a stay-home guy or whatever. There's definitely animosity here. So then, Isaac and Abimelech. So here's something very interesting, and I was going to skip over this, but then it's really important to see these pieces come together. So we're going to go ahead, and this is starting chapter 26. Now there was a famine in the land, besides the previous famine in Abraham's time. And Isaac went to Abimelech, the king of the Philistines in Gerar. And the Lord appeared to Isaac and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land where I tell you. Stay in this land for a while, and I will be with you, and I will bless you. For you and your descendants I will give you all these lands, and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give them all these lands, and through your offspring all nations will be blessed." That again is the promise of the Messiah. The Messiah was for all people, not just the Jewish people. The Messiah was for all nations on earth will be blessed. That is a messianic promise. Because Abraham obeyed me and did everything I required of him, keeping my commandments and decrees and my instructions. So Isaac stayed there in Gerar. Then the men of that place asked him about his wife. He said, "She is my sister." So obviously he didn't learn anything from his father, who did this twice to the same king. So he says, because he was afraid to say, "She's my wife," he thought, "men of this place might kill me on account of Rebekah because she is beautiful." And I also want to know, like, these women are not young women. They must have had some kind of severe beauty secrets to be so lovely that all these men, and you know, they live in a culture where the most powerful man takes all the beautiful women, you know? And so people would, if they had a pretty girl or someone near them, they would like, "Hey, I'm gonna go give this girl to the king and then I'll be powerful and I'll have his favor." So that's a culture. It's not a good culture, but that's the culture. So he's fearing for his life, just like his father did. They have a while to learn, some things to learn about trusting God. When Isaac had been there a long time, Abimelech of the Philistines looked down from a window and saw Isaac caressing his wife Rebekah. So Abimelech summoned Isaac and said, "She's really your wife. Why did you say she's my sister?" And Isaac answered, "Because I thought I might lose my life on account of her." Then Abimelech, who's much older now, see, Abimelech had wanted to marry Sarah, so he's an older man now. He's an older man. So he says, "What is this you have done to us? One of my men," so it's not him, because he's older. He's like, "One of my men might have slept with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So Abimelech gave order to all the people, "Anyone harms this man or his wife shall be put to death." And Isaac planted crops in the land, and the same year reaped 100-fold because the Lord blessed him. And the man became rich, and wealth continued to grow until he became very wealthy. And he had so many flocks and herds and servants that the Philistines envied him. So all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the time of his father Abraham, Philistines stopped up, filling the earth. And Abraham said to Isaac, "Move away from us. You have become too powerful for us." So Isaac moved away from there and encamped in the land in the valley of Gerar. There he settled, and Isaac reopened the wells and had dug at the time of his father Abraham, which the Philistines stopped up after Abraham died, and gave him the same names that his father had given them. So obviously, you know, water is a big thing there, just like it is here in Wyoming, where we pay for it, and we want it, and we don't have anything to grow unless we have it, or you happen to live by a river. So it's the same thing there. So a way of punishing people was to take their water well or cover it up or do injury. So people are becoming very jealous of Isaac, and they're beginning to fill up all these wells. But it doesn't matter what happens, Isaac just keeps getting blessed by God. So verse 19 says, Isaac's servants dug in the valley and discovered a well of fresh water there. But the herders of Gerar quarreled with those of Isaac and said, "The water is ours." So he named the well Esau, because they disputed with him. Then they dug another well, and they quarreled over that one, so he named it Sinna. And he moved from there and dug another well, so no one quarreled with him over it, so he named it Rehoboth, saying, "Now God has given us room, and we will flourish in the land." From there he went to Beersheba. That's important to remember, so we've been there before. And then the night the Lord appeared to him. "I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you, and I will increase the number of your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham." So Isaac, remember, these are the patriarchs of the Jewish people, Judeo-Christian patriarchs. Abraham was first, then Isaac. And so Isaac, God now makes the same covenant with Isaac right here at this place, Beersheba. So Isaac builds an altar there and called on the name of the Lord, and there he pitched his tent, and there his servants dug a well. Meanwhile, Abimelech had come to him from Gerar, and Ahazeth, his personal advisor, and Phicol, the commander of his forces. And Isaac said to them, "Why have you come to me, since you were hostile to me and sent me away?" And they answered, "We saw clearly that God was with you, so we said, we ought to have a sworn agreement between us, between you and us. Let us make a treaty with you that you will not do us harm,
Just as we will not do you harm, but always treated you well and sent you away peacefully, and now you are blessed by the Lord. And Isaac made a feast for them, and they ate and drank, and early in the morning the men swore an oath to them, and Isaac sent them on their way, and they went away peacefully. And then Isaac's servants came both to him about the well that they had dug, and they said, that we found water. And he called it Sheba. And to this day, the name of the town is Beersheba. So, Jacob, and so it goes on to, there's something really important here. It says Jacob takes Esau's blade. When Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, daughter of Beriah the Hittite, and Basemath, daughter of Elon the Hittite. And they were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. Now that's really important. So most of this is very easily explained by just reading it. We see here in this passage that Isaac hasn't learned from his dad's bad habit. We see that Abimelech has behaved pretty well to both Abraham and Isaac. And but now you can see that Abimelech obviously sees that Isaac is blessed. So he sees him, so he sends him away because he's like getting too powerful. Then he says, like, wait a minute, let's make sure he's our friend. So he makes a covenant of peace. And Isaac is blessed beyond everything noticeable. This is totally from God. It's so from God that everyone around sees that Isaac has something special going on. And that is a testimony to these people. And again, we talk about water always being an issue. But in the provision of the wells, God always shows, I will provide for you. I am your provider. And this is really important because at Beersheba, back in Genesis 21, if you remember, Abraham made a pact with Abimelech and confirmed the blessing of the Lord in the same place. Now here is Isaac again on another confrontation from God about the blessing. Later, Jacob will be back to this place. Much later, there will be some idolatry on this place. And so you know that when the people, these Jewish people, the Hebrew people, defiled God in this place, this sacred place where they made the covenant, it was a terrible defilement of God. And many of them were exiled and punished. And after they're exiled, later on we'll get to this story, they come back to the same place. And here's what's really interesting. In 1948, many of the Jews came back to the same place, right? And this place signifies water, covenant promise, and God's provision. So after all the water disputes, Isaac is now confirmed to be esteemed by all the people around him. Now, something really very important happens at the end of that chapter, and that is that Esau, being impulsive, marries two women. They're Canaanite, which means they're pagans, which means they worship other idols and gods. It's terrible for the family. So because of Esau's impulsiveness, not to have one but two of these women, probably because they were good looking, rather than having character, brought tremendous pain to the family. And I think that's really important to remember. So let me see, check time. Okay. So when Esau was old and his eyes were so weak he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." "Here I am," he answered. And Isaac said, "I am now an old man, and I know the day of my death. Now then, get your equipment, your quiver and your bow, and go into the open country and hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I will bring to me to eat, and I will give you the blessing before I die." Now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau left for the open country to hunt and bring game back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "Look, I've overheard your father to say to your brother Esau, bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die. Now, my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you. Go to the flock and bring me two choice goats so that I can prepare some tasty food for your father, just the way he likes it. And take it to your father to eat, and I will give him this blessing, and he will give you his blessing before he dies. But Jacob says to Rebekah, but my brother Esau is hairy, and I am smooth. What if my father touches me? I will appear to be tricking him and bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing. His mother said to him, my son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me. So he went out and got them for his mother, and she prepared the tasty food just the way that his father liked it. And Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her son, which she had in the house, and put them on her son, and she covered his hands and smooth parts of his neck with goat skin. And she handed to her son the tasty food and bread she had made. And he went to his father. My father. Yes, my son, he said. Who is it? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit and eat some of my game, that you may give me your blessing. Isaac asked his son, how is it that you find it so quickly, my son? The Lord has given me success, he replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, come near me so I can touch you, my son, to know that you are really my son Esau or not. So obviously he was questioning the voice and the presence and the quickness. So Jacob went close to his father and he touched him. The voice is of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of brother Esau. So he proceeded to bless him. Are you really my son Esau? He asked. I am, he replied. Then he said, my son, bring me some of your game to eat, that I might give you the blessing. Jacob brought him to it, and he ate it, and some brought wine and drank, and he brought some wine and he drank. And his father Isaac said, come here, my son, and kiss me. So he went to him and kissed him, and Isaac caught the smell of his clothes. So he's still checking it out. But he's wearing Esau's clothes. So he blessed him and said, the smell of my son, like the smell of the field, the Lord has blessed. So you know that Rebekah went and got some of his dirty garments and put it on this boy, right? You see that. She thought this out, incredibly. May God give you the heaven's dew and the earth's richness and the abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and people bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed. May those who bless you be blessed. And after Isaac finished blessing him, Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence when his brother Esau came from hunting. And he too had prepared the tasty food and brought it to his father. And then he said to him, my father, please sit and eat some of my game, that you may give me your blessing. His father Isaac said, who are you? I am your son, he answered, your firstborn Esau. Isaac trembled violently, and he said, who is this then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it because before you came, and I blessed him. Indeed, he will be blessed. When Esau heard his father's word, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry, and he said to his father, bless me too, my father. But he said, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. Esau said, isn't he rightly named Jacob? This is the second time he has taken advantage of me. He took my birthright and now my blessing. Then he asked, haven't you reserved any blessings for me? And Isaac answered Esau, I have made him lord over you and made his relatives his servants. And I have sustained him with grain and new wine. What could I possibly do for you, my son? And Esau said to his father, do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father. Esau wept out loud. And his father Isaac answered him, your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above, and you will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother. And when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck. Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given, and he said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. When Rebekah was told that her older son had said, she sent for her younger son and said to him, your brother is planning to avenge himself by killing you. Now, my son, do what I say. Flee once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury subsides. And when your brother is no longer angry with you and forgets what you did to him, I will send word for you to come back. Why should I lose both of you in one day? Then Rebekah said to Isaac, I am disgusted with living because of these Hittite women. If Jacob takes a wife from among the people of this land, from the Hittite women, my life will not be worth living. That's serious. So then this deception seems really bad. You're like, how could they do this? So you really see the whole thing behind it. If you look, Rebekah is so unhappy for whatever these women have done to her. It's serious. So I was thinking about this. Besides them being idolaters, which is seriously bad, they know they are supposed to serve the one true God, and these other people are serving these other gods. You know, I was trying to think, what did they do? Like maybe the wives of Esau wouldn't let Rebekah have access to their children. But worst of all, we know that these women were teaching pagan worship to her grandchildren, which would have been horrifying. And so she feels like, I'm doing God a favor by intervening so that this blessing doesn't go to these pagans. That's what she's thinking. And Jacob just does what he says, and he knows that Esau's impulsive and has caused everybody pain, doesn't think about anything but what he wants, and so he goes along with it. And but here we see that Rebekah, by sending Jacob away, saves his life. Sadly, she never ever will see him again. And so I think that we probably, because of time, should stop there. But here's one interesting thing if looking at the beginning of chapter 28. So Isaac called for Jacob and blessed him, and he commanded him, do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go at once to Paddan Aram, the house of your mother's father Bethuel. Take a wife yourself there from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you and make your descendants fruitful, increase your numbers until you become a community of people. May he give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham so that you take possession of the land where you now reside as a foreigner, the land that God gave to Abraham. Then Isaac sent Jacob on his way, and he went to Paddan Aram to Laban, son of Bethuel, the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, who was the mother of Jacob and Esau. Now Esau learned that Isaac blessed Jacob and had sent him away to Paddan Aram to have a wife from there. Then he blessed him and commanded him, do not marry a Canaanite woman. And that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother and gone to Paddan Aram. And Esau then realized how displeasing, this is important, the Canaanite women were to his father. So he went to Ishmael and married Bethuel, the sister of Nebaioth, the daughter of Ishmael, the son of Abraham, in addition to the wives he already had. So all of a sudden, this is really interesting, and we'll stop here. All of a sudden, he has this realization. Wow. Like, wow, look what this has caused great. So he makes an attempt to make nice with his parents, which is interesting. So, and we'll continue there next week. But it's really important. Now, Jacob's about to get an education in life and even deception and the things that he's dealt with. But it's really interesting that all of a sudden, even Isaac kind of realizes some things. Like when he blesses Jacob, it seems like he's realizing that Esau is not the one. He's not the one because he's been impulsive. He's followed his own way. And he finally realized Jacob is the one. Jacob is the one. And so then Esau makes some steps to bring peace in the family, which is really kind of cool. It's interesting that he's trying to win grace with his father and mother. So a lot happening here, and the bottom line is that so many times the patriarchs forgot to trust God. They just forgot to trust him. As if God, has to follow the line of a deception, like have to give the blessing. As if God has to do that, As if God doesn't have enough for everybody. As if God can't provide, because in the end, God blesses both of these young men. And in the end, you will see that Esau when he throws off the yoke, just like Isaac said, he becomes very blessed. So he wanders around and wastes a lot of his life wearing this yoke of hatred, and then he finally gets peace when he throws it off. And we'll see that later. When he sees it, just throws off the yoke and lets go and trusts God to be a provider, which is really interesting. So do we do that? You know, do we? I know I have been guilty of not trusting God to be the provider and running ahead and doing my own thing and not waiting on God, you know, just to say, what are you doing? You know, God knows exactly what he's doing. And we have to just continue to do the right thing and follow God while he's pointing it out. And he doesn't come down and write on the wall all the time, which we wish he would. But that would take very little faith. But God is the provider. He will provide for those who call on his name. And that's not just meaning provision like wealth. That's meaning the family, the success, the covenant, the whatever God created you to be. That's the only way you're ever going to have peace, is when you are who God created you to be anyway. The rest is just stuff, you know. And you're only going to be what God created you to be when you use those special things that he gave you, which everybody's different, and use those to help other people. That's when you find peace. That's when you serve God, when you live out what he created you to be. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this narrative, the people who were faithful. And even though they messed up sometimes like we do, they were still faithful to bring the line that brought your son, who is for all of us, for every nation, not for just the Jewish people, but for every nation on earth. You saw way ahead of time to provide for us by bringing Jesus. And in the meantime, you provided for these people who said, yes, I will covenant to follow you. So we covenant to follow you, dear Jesus. Please lead us in the way of wisdom and trust you to be our provider. We thank you so much. Amen.
Climb aboard this train, step out of your sin. Climb aboard this train, climb aboard this train, climb aboard this train, and step out of your